Good afternoon. Today we're releasing our reviews of 3 officer-involved shooting incidents along with associated video. The loss of life, no matter the circumstances, is always somber and serious, leaving an impact on many in the community. This press conference is intended to fulfill our goal to release body-worn camera evidence per our protocol, and to provide the community we serve with factual information about these critical incidents. We do this while balancing the impact on privacy and constitutional rights. These videos contain graphic, violent content that's not appropriate for general audiences, including children, so we ask that media be mindful of that for any live broadcasting. The letters we provided to law enforcement agencies and copies of the videos will be available as soon as this briefing is over. Keep in mind, this video evidence is exempt under the California Public Records Act. Our decision to release it does not otherwise waive that privilege. We are releasing the videos with letters which outline our legal analysis of the shootings to provide context. With context, video evidence can help the public in understanding why and how an officer-involved shooting occurred and build trust in law enforcement. Presented out of context, a video clip can lead to incorrect and sometimes inflammatory narrative about the incident. Pursuant to the OIS Video Evidence Release Protocol, we only release video that is relevant to our legal analysis of the shooting. Faces of the individuals are blurred out of respect for their privacy. Let me discuss with you the review standard and applicable laws. The purpose of the DA's review of officer-involved shootings is to determine whether criminal charges should be filed. In other words, was a crime committed? We review all of the evidence to determine what the facts are and what we can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. The video is just one piece of that evidence. We don't review department policies, training, discipline, the appropriate use of non-use of less lethal force options, or whether there may be civil liability. Those are not considerations outlined under the law. Under the law, an officer's use of deadly force is permitted if a reasonable officer has probable cause to believe the suspect poses a threat of death or serious physical injury to the officer or to others. All determinations must embody the fact that police officers are often forced to make split-second judgments in circumstances that are tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving about the amount of force necessary in a particular situation. The first incident I want to discuss is the fatal shooting of Peter Celis on April 30th, 2017. This is the swimming pool shooting at the La Jolla Crossroads apartment complex. About 20 to 40 minutes before the shooting began, Celis entered the pool area and sat down in a lounge chair. He removed a bottle of beer from his backpack and began to drink. There was a party in the pool area, and the party host eventually approached Celis and offered him a beverage. Celis immediately pulled a semi-automatic pistol from his backpack and began to fire at the host and his friends. San Diego Police Department dispatch received a 911 call reporting an active shooter at the La Jolla Crossroads apartment complex and information that several victims had been shot. An STPD sergeant and an Able helicopter arrived on scene within 7 minutes. The sergeant parked his vehicle south of the pool and approached on foot, moving into position near the northwest corner of the pool area. 2 additional officers arrived on scene and approached on foot from the south. During this time, injured victims and blood trails were visible inside and outside the pool area as the officers approached. The STPD helicopter spotted Celis and broadcast his location, All of the officers were informed by Abel that he was armed and had fired at civilians. SDPD officers moved into the line of danger in order to potentially save more lives and promptly render aid to victims who had been shot. Celis fired at the sergeant as he crossed the sidewalk along the exterior of the pool area. The sergeant fired back with his shotgun from behind a low wall. Celis moved off the lounge chair to between the pool fence and a planter. He could be seen attempting to reload his pistol from the vantage point of Abel, and this information was broadcast to the officers, and he had plenty additional ammunition. 2 officers proceeded along the sidewalk west of the pool area. One officer was armed with a Glock 9mm pistol and the other with a shotgun. They were unable to see Celis until they reached a position directly west of him, where the only thing between the officers and Celis was a metal fence with wide gaps between each bar. Celis stood up with a gun in his hand, and one of the officers ordered him to, quote, drop the gun. Celis refused the command and pointed his gun at the officers. Both officers fired at Celis. Several victims were pinned down in the vicinity of the pool at the time the officers returned fire. Some were suffering from gunshot wounds. An officer's body-worn camera and the Able flight camera both recorded the shooting. There were no security cameras in the pool area. Celis shot 7 people. The victims suffered from serious gunshot wounds to the abdomen, arms, chest, legs, shoulder, and torso. Another victim was injured as he fell while trying to escape over a fence. One woman at the party, Monique Clark, a mother of 3 little girls, died after being shot. She was loved by many. Her last words were to another victim who was near her that she wanted her daughters to know how much she loved them. I spoke with Monique's family, and they continue to suffer an immeasurable loss. Still, they found the grace to ask that I relay to the officers that their intervention helped save more lives, and even though their daughter was lost, it brought them comfort to know that the officers held her hands all the way from the crime scene to the hospital, so she felt a human touch. Based on the totality of the circumstances, the San Diego Police Department officers had a reasonable belief they needed to defend themselves and others present. Therefore, they bear no criminal liability for their actions. The video you're about to see is 3 minutes and 33 seconds long. It's from the Able helicopter footage and the officer body-worn camera video. The second incident is the fatal shooting of Damon Seitz. On the morning of March 10, Seitz called his sister to notify her of their mother's death. He then called 911 and reported that he discovered his mother unresponsive and possibly dead. A family member also called the Escondido Police Department to warn the responding officers that Seitz had mental issues and was in possession of several firearms. The police dispatcher informed the officers of the weapons prior to their arrival at the Seitz residence. Officers from the Escondido Police Department arrived and began their investigation into the circumstances of the mother's death, which included questioning Seitz. In the minutes leading up to the shooting, 2 officers went outside and were standing in the driveway. Another officer was watching Seitz, who was sitting in a recliner near the front door. While watching Seitz from the threshold of the front door, the officer continued to speak with Seitz. Seitz suddenly became agitated at the officers and agitated that they were continuing their investigation. He unexpectedly stood up and approached the officer who was standing in the doorway. Seitz thrust his right hand toward the officer in an aggressive manner and told him to leave. The officer became concerned, in particular, not knowing at the time the full story as to the mother's death, and decided to detain Seitz by grabbing his outstretched right hand to gain control over him. As the officer attempted to grab Seitz's hand, Seitz stepped back and pulled out a semi-automatic pistol that was previously concealed. As soon as Seitz pulled the gun, the officer drew his pistol, yelling rapidly 4 to 5 times at Seitz to, quote, "drop the gun." The officer retreated backward. Seitz ignored the officer's commands. He held the pistol in his right hand and racked the slide portion of the gun with his left hand, as if he were about to chamber a bullet. Seitz started to raise the gun up towards the officer, holding the pistol in front of him. Subsequent investigation determined the gun was loaded with 1 round in the chamber and 6 rounds in the magazine. Fearing for his safety and the safety of the other officers, the officer fired at Seitz. He was transported to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. The shooting incident unfolds very quickly and was captured on the officer's body-worn camera. Because the speed at which the incident took place, we have prepared still images of portions of the video which shows Seitz racking the pistol and then holding it out in front of him. These are simply images taken from the video itself. The moments leading up to the shooting were also captured on another officer's body-worn camera from an angle outside of the house and show the officer's reaction as the situation quickly escalated. Based on the totality of the circumstances, the Escondido officers had a reasonable belief they needed to defend themselves and others present. Therefore, they bear no criminal liability for their actions. Next, you'll see a short video, just over a minute, followed by 2 still images. The third incident is the non-fatal shooting of Robert Parkin. We completed our review of this incident in May, but did not release it because Mr. Parkin was being prosecuted for a number of charges, so we didn't want to taint a potential jury against Mr. Parkin. Parkin was charged with 10 counts, including robbery with the personal use of a firearm, assaulting a peace officer with a firearm, possession of a firearm by a felon, and evading an officer with reckless driving. He pleaded guilty to all of the charges and is serving a prison sentence of 21 years and 4 months. On November 14, 2016, Parkin pointed a gun in a robbery at a taco shop employee and took $500 in cash. He rode away on a motorcycle. The staff at the taco shop immediately reported the robbery to the sheriff's department and gave a detailed description of Parkin, including the color of his motorcycle and his appearance. A deputy patrolling the area saw Parkin within minutes. He attempted to stop Parkin, but Parkin accelerated and led deputies on a brief pursuit. Parkin reached speeds of 105 miles per hour on El Camino Real in Encinitas. Parkin attempted to make a turn and lost control of his motorcycle. He crashed into a curb and tried to run away from the deputies. One deputy told Parkin to stop, but Parkin did not follow the command. The deputy saw Parkin move his hand into his waist area. Parkin retrieved a silver semi-automatic handgun, continued to run and look over his shoulder at the deputy. The deputy drew his firearm and continued to give commands to Parkin. The deputy could see Parkin was manipulating the handgun, and the deputy heard the distinct sound of a slide moving. Parkin turned toward the deputy and moved the firearm from his mid-sternum to hip level. Fearing he was about to be shot, the deputy fired at Parkin 4 times. Parkin fell to the ground. His gun fell to his left. When Parkin reached for the gun, the deputy shot him again. Parkin's gun had a magazine filled with 7 rounds and the stolen cash from the taco shop. He tested positive for methamphetamine and opiates. He was admitted to the hospital for treatment and survived. Based on the totality of circumstances, the San Diego Sheriff's deputy had a reasonable belief he needed to defend himself and others present. Therefore, he bears no criminal liability for his actions. At the end of this briefing, you can pick up a flash drive at the back of the room which contains the videos we screened today, as well as copies of the letters delivered to law enforcement. We would appreciate if the media organizations that choose to post these videos also post the letters so the public can read them in the appropriate context. Are there any questions?